Hello and welcome. My name is Scott Gross, and I'm joined by Kimberly Peace. And Kimberly is running for the Select Board in Goffstown on March 14th. You'll be voting, and many of you might not know Kimberly. So I've known you for many years, and when you told me that you decided to run for Select Board, I was very happy for you. So GTV is a great forum for you to, talk to the voters a little bit. So we're going to have a conversation today about Select Board, why you're running, et cetera. So let's get started in a way, Kimberly. For those of you who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and ultimately why did you decide to do this? It's a pretty big job.
Yeah, thanks. First, thanks to Scott, and thank you for GTV, for the staff that's helping us do this today. I appreciate the opportunity. And I've wanted to be involved in politics a little more than I have in the past. We moved here 23 years ago, and I have two children who are now in college, so I'm an empty nester. And, throughout their childhood, ever since I started here, I was on the Conservation Commission and then the Planning Board. In the past 2 years, I've been the vice chair of the planning board and then member of the CIP committee. So I've tiptoed into, doing more efforts as my children have gotten older, and, the parenting was a little bit easier in a different way, of course.
But now Select Board. Why Select Board of all jobs?
It's, I think that I have some good ideas, and I think that it's good to have some fresh perspective. We see a lot of faces in town government that have been in town government for a while. And there's a lot to say about bringing experience to these roles, but I also think that it's good to have some fresh perspectives intermixed. As a town, we have 5 select board members. Not all towns in New Hampshire do. A lot of them just have 3. So you have that mix of personalities, and I think it's just good to have a better representation of our demographics right now. As somebody my kids just graduated high school, so I've just was here in the theater program, and I feel like I was just at Maple Avenue the other day. So, the soccer fields, I know what our rec fields look like. I just feel like it's good to have a chance to bring in some different demographics, and especially someone who, with my career in environmental planning and environmental permitting, I've looked at a lot of our rules and requirements over the years through the planning board, through the CIP committee, through the budget committee process. I haven't been on budget committee, but I've watched these processes take place, and I just feel like I'm ready to serve.
All right, so let's delve into some of the issues. The hot issue in the Goffstown right now has really been the library, but the library is just, one small piece, and it has to deal with infrastructure.
Right.
So I have heard over the last year or two that our police department needs renovations and possibly an expansion. I know for a fact that our 2 town pools are in really, really, rough shape. We just did an upgrade to our Church Street fire station, but the one in Pinardville also needs some work. So there are some infrastructure issues in Goffstown that you might have to deal with as a select board member. What are your thoughts, on these, pressing infrastructure issues, and any creative ideas on how to address them so we can pay for them in a way?
That's a great question, and I think it's a question that we collectively as taxpayers have to look at. I mean, it's just like a homeowner. Do you replace your stove or buy a new one every, when things go wrong? And looking at our town infrastructure, we have to face those choices. Do we replace? Do we maintain? Do we repair? The past 2 years on CIP were really informative because the department chairs come forward, and for the CIP, for those who don't know, it's any big ticket items or vehicles that we try to plan out over a 6-year period so we don't have that influx. So you don't have the pool and the library and a new police station at the same time. So in order to kind of balance that out, we look at these items. Can this one last a little bit longer so that we can do the next one, so that we don't all have these big bond issues? I think that there will be bonds in our future for either school issues or the town pool, as you said. Having one pool instead of maintaining 2 pools in our community, I think, is a great idea. I think we do have to maintain and update our police station. I don't think, because we've improved Church Street so much, I'm not sure, there's been talk about a collective police fire station, centralized. I'm not sure that that's in our budget, given we could probably look at repairs, maintenance, maintaining what we have with some improvements. So I think our department heads understand the tax problems in town. And I think when they bring their budgets forward, they're pretty conscious of that. I didn't feel as I sat through watching these numbers come through that anyone was saying, gosh, we would just love a brand new pool. I need $8 million to get a pool in. Well, no, I think Rick's being very responsible about how he's framing that and looking at this is what we need to really make it work, and here's why we don't need to. And for the same token, I think the police, understand if we can't get a brand new facility, which, $17, $20 million. I don't know what the ticket item is on that, but, let's look at the repairs that can help our staff. And it ties into the important problem of maintaining our staff, because we have staff turnover issues in town. People come, they get trained, and they leave. And when they go through that onboarding and training process and then take it to another town, we've lost all those resources. So, is improving the police locker room something that's going to make a big difference for whether somebody has to spend their 12-hour shift or, in their car? So I think these are questions we all have to take a look at. And taxes is always about balancing economic development versus residential housing development. And what's that magic ticket answer? Every year we look at it and we try to make sure it's balanced and really present to the taxpayers, the best budget possible. And I think just listening and looking at all the items carefully is what we can really do as a select board every year.
So getting back to infrastructure, there was, I believe it was a Warren article last year with respect to the Tyrrell Hill Fire Station. Mm-hmm. And right now, that station is not operable. We don't have, there might be used for storage, but it's not a fully functioning firehouse. What are your thoughts if you were going to be on the select board with respect to that, that station? I mean, can we operate a third station, or should we just stick with two? Or what are your thoughts on that? It's
interesting that the warrant article that came forward was a petitioned warrant article. And so it didn't receive the support from the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board because there's a lot of money that needs to go into that fire station before it can be used. We can't just open the doors and put trucks and staff there. You have to, there's some issues there that need to be worked on. And so I think if the Board of Selectmen said we would need to spend this much money to open that station, because we've heard complaints on that side of town, and I live on that side of town. I live on Goffstown Back Road. So that would be my fire station. So is the money, are the taxpayers willing to invest that money to update that station and man it versus maybe putting more improvements in the Penardville station, which needs improvements already. Right. So I think it's something that would have to be explored. And I think our taxpayers are smart in terms of they want to know the numbers. Tell me how much this is going to cost. I think that's some of the debate that's going on with the library right now. Tell me how much this is going to cost me in my, $200,000 home. What's my tax bill? And then they can make the trade-off. They can make the decision. So if we had to spend, say, $80,000 to fix the station, and then every year it's going to operate, it needs this much money to operate. That's a way to put it to the voters and say, if you want a fire station on the east side, this is what we would have to do.
So you just mentioned, the voters, and, one of the areas where I think that is critical for both town and school is communication. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that I read on social media. Hardly post, but I do read a lot. What would you do as a select board member to keep citizens informed? One question. And then another question is, how do you deal with social media when some of the information on social media is inaccurate?
I'm not sure there's an easy answer to the inaccurate information. I think people are going to post what they're going to post no matter what the social media issue is. And, you could spend a lot of time chasing it or paying attention to it. I think that our staff have on occasion weighed into some comments when they're completely false. I've seen members of committees, I myself have commented on something when it's just completely not true. Joanne Duffy has commented several times.
Would you, as a select board member, if you saw something that was not accurate, would you kind of jump in to the fray and correct it?
Sure. I think when so if it's wildly inaccurate, I would say, hey, have you, this is why we made this decision. And I have said that for the planning board. This is how we made this decision. This came about because of this. There's miscommunication about private parcels and how much a developer can and can't do and what they use it for. I've made comments on that in the past. I do think the town needs to have a better use of the town's Facebook page. And unfortunately, it can take a lot of work. So if you have to manage the town page and all the comments, that can be, a big job for our already overburdened staff.
I mean, some communities actually have a social media person.
Right.
That does it in a part-time capacity. Is that something that you think we need or you would explore? Or?
Well, I think it's tricky because that person would always have to go to the select board, for example, and say, hey, I want to respond like this. Or, we would need to give someone permission to do that. And I think that's a tricky situation in who would do that. Can Joanne answer all the planning board comments? Well, would she be responsible for that? That's asking another aspect of your job that you already have.
Right.
Could we add that to the HR position? If the proposed budget gets funded and we pick an HR person, could that be someone who also is sort of a PR person who has that skill set, or a marketing person? We don't have a marketing person on staff. So it is tricky for a town-run website and Facebook page to present information because it always has to be accurate. And you don't want to wade into, well, my brother's uncle said this. Is it true or not? It's I only come in when there's wild inaccuracies.
Okay.
It's a challenging situation. Social media can get out of control.
Yeah. So one thing that I've heard over the years is there are some in the public who wish that town hall was open, one night a week. And I think it used to be a while ago. Do you think that that's something that we need in Goffstown, the ability for someone who might have a commute to Massachusetts or Maine, having the ability to conduct business on a weeknight?
I think it's great. I think it would be a good idea if we could look at the staffing in town and how we would do that. So, for example, do we need one person and it's just the clerk's office? I think that's probably the majority of what would take place. And, so you give that person a half day on, say, Monday or Tuesday, and then they work through Wednesday night, that sort of thing. Again, you have to kind of look at everybody's balance of trade-offs because, as I said, I feel like our staff is very busy right now. And so I think it's useful. I also think that we could take a look at what services we could put online. We have a lot of online registry right now for vehicles, dog licenses. That's a tremendous help. Even if you have to pay the $3 or $4 to do it, you can still do it in your pajamas at 2:00 in the morning. Yeah. So what else could we do to shift online? But I don't think it's a bad proposition. And I think it's the same sort of situation where, what do the voters feel? Is that something that we'd want to put to the voters? And is there a cost to it? Is there a way to trade off our staff so that someone's available one night a week? It's definitely a good idea.
I want to touch base with you a little bit on, you mentioned before that you've been on the planning board, and there's also been a lot of discussion. There are folks who just don't understand why we're building housing along Mast Road and what many thought was going to be, for lack of a better term, prime commercial real estate, where we wouldn't have anybody, no town services that were needed per se. And now we've got homes, or in this case, condos or townhouses. What would we tell these people? We try to keep our taxes low, and yet now we have commercial, which usually doesn't have a whole lot of services associated with it, and now we've got townhouses. What would you tell these people as select board member? Well,
the first I would say is something that we're proposing to the voters in March is the change to the use of a potential for allowing residential use in the commercial flex zone, and removing that as an opportunity so that as it is right now, you have to come in for a zoning, I think it's a variance or a special use, a special exception. And we would just take that off the table. So we want that I was just looking at the zoning map today. So, you've got that commercial corridor down Mast Road and then going down 114 and then into Pinardville. That is a great corridor, and we do need to preserve that, prime real estate for our economic development. So that's one change that we identified, because I feel like we lost the battle on that front in the villa, at the place across from the villa. And I think
we lost the battle. Can you expand on that?
So in putting that in place, so every parcel that's owned by private development, they have to come in and they have to meet our rules. So, for example, we have a new car wash down the road. So they came in and they met our rules and they worked with our staff. And, I can't tell them, there were some people who said, do we need another car wash? Well, that's not up to us as a planning board. Someone comes forward and says, I want to do X, Y, or Z. We say, here's our rules. You have to meet our rules. So if you meet our rules.
And storage facilities and gas stations, which we seem to have plenty of, as long as they follow the regulations for the town, they're good.
Right.
You can't tell them no.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And in
some people who think to the contrary on that.
Right. And that's, a struggle that we face, right? Do we need another, storage unit on Mast Road? Well, I don't know. It depends on the person who owns that parcel.
Right.
So, but I think the challenge is that when you need a variance or a special exception from zoning, or even from planning, if you need a waiver, we have sites that come in for that. And I'll say that all the easy sites in town have already been developed. So if you buy land in Goffstown now and you're looking to develop it, it's going to have some type of challenge. And we work with the applicants to try to make those challenges work. Maybe you shift your parking lot a little. We worked with the Starbucks to change their parking lot design a little bit. But allowing a residential use in a commercial zone was a decision that was made by the zoning board. And I'm not on the zoning board, so I can't speak to that. But I know that there are a lot of people who were just surprised that that came forward. I'll also say that the zoning board meetings are publicly advertised, and that can happen without people coming forward and saying anything. And because that didn't have any, I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 abutters, there aren't a lot of people that knew that happened. And they say, how did this happen? Well, unfortunately, these meetings do get advertised, but there wasn't enough opposition to it. And the applicant came forward and said, hey, I meet your criteria. Right. And I'm not on the zoning, so I won't second guess that decision. But that's how it happens.
Yeah, so on that same vein, I've also heard, again, I don't know if it's true or not true, that we would have more commercial development if we had better infrastructure. So I keep hearing we need water, accessible water. We need accessible sewer, and we need natural gas. Is there a degree of truth to that, do you think, or?
There's a big percentage of our commercial zone that already has access to those resources, and we could expand on that. You and I were talking about, there's a TIF, which is Tax Increment Financing District. The state allowed towns to create these districts. That was sort of the idea of shovel-ready projects, where you take a site and you put in the infrastructure, and then you sell it back to the developers, and then you make your money there. So there's grants and bonds, and that's a financial tool that was presented to the voters in 2007, and it was turned down. And I think there were a couple reasons why, but it's never been revisited. And I don't think it's been presented to the voters to say, this is an opportunity to, we could expand on the resources. We could take a site, we could pre-develop it. And then as the developers come through, we get the money back, and then we trade it off in the taxes that we get from an unused parcel. I think that's a possibility. Okay. And it's one that hasn't been re-explored. And I'm not sure why, but I think it's something that's really good. It's a good idea. It's still out there. I was just looking at it this afternoon. We have a great Economic Development Council, and I was just looking at their website again this afternoon. There's revitalization opportunities in the Village Center and in Penardville. I don't know if people are aware of that, but there's opportunity.
79E, that?
Yeah, 79E. So it's available for, and I wrote it down so I don't get it right, but it's the Village Revitalization Tax Relief District. So if you want to buy a parcel in Penardville, maybe upgrade it to a different business use, there's some tax relief incentives to that. So I think our economic committee in development is trying to get that forward to people and trying to make those statements and pushing for that, because as many of us know, economic development balances the housing development. So
right. So you've served for many years on various committees, and I'm curious, you made a lot of decisions. Are there ever where you're like, you went home, you're like, or maybe a year or two later, you're like, I wish I would have done something different. Is there anything that you wish you had a do-over on?
I wish, so as a mom and as everybody who has busy families, I heard about the zoning for the site across from the villa, and I didn't go to that meeting, and I wish I would have. I wish I would have put up my public comment about it. I think when we look at the development off Bog Road, it's a really large development, and we worked with that developer for many years, and we had very concerned abutters. And I don't think that we gave those abutters enough leeway to respond to their concerns. They came back for extensions. I voted against those extensions. As we got into the process, I said, this is a lot. and we want them to come back with better plans. So I did vote against it, but it didn't work. And you know, there's 7 people on a planning board. And the other thing that I would say is, I was thinking about this. When I first moved here and I heard that the rail trail corridor was being redeveloped, you know, our rail trail is a great example of, you know, this great recreational tool in our town. And I was a little like confused by why we would need that when we have so many other trails in town. Then I had 2 kids. And I have used that rail trail a million times in all different directions. And so once I sort of realized the value of that, I became a strong supporter of the rail trail and would support it in every, you know, opportunity. But when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, who wants to walk by the road? Well, they've done such an amazing job with it, and it's such a beautiful corridor. So I would definitely be a supporter of that.
So you mentioned before, you said there's 7 people on the planning board. There are 5 folks that serve on the select board. You're vying for one of those seats. How do you make sure that you get along and that you're able to get things done, knowing that you have 4 other people that you might have to convince on something? How have you maybe done that in the past, or what attributes do you have that, you know, because it's not just you. I mean, right. It's a team.
It's an exercise in group dynamics. I mean, the planning board right now is a pretty, are pretty like-minded, but we've definitely had issues in the past where we've disagreed. And, you know, you have to learn through these processes to disagree respectfully. You know, you can't just stand up and say, you stink, and, you know, like that doesn't happen. You have to sort of say, well, this is my view. And you have to present your view to someone else to change it. You have to understand their view. So you need to listen. I need to understand why you're disagreeing with me, because maybe there's something I can say that can say, hey, Scott, you didn't think about it this way. And I think that that's important. I know you and I have been at odds in the past at times. I know.
I get along with everybody.
It's so long. We've both lived here a long time. But you have to learn how to be civil. And that's something that's missing in our society right now, is to have that civil discourse. To say, you know, hey, call us. You know, I see that you're disagreeing on this, but let's talk about it. Not, you know, you don't sort of drag each other out across the board meetings. And it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes time to get to know each other. So, you know, who you are as a person. So maybe you haven't thought about it. Your question before about if I thought of something I made a wrong decision on, you know, the plans just sort of show up and you get them a few days before, but you're at the meeting and you're looking at it, and, you know, things can fly kind of fast. And I would imagine on the select board, with as much as they have to deal with, that there's a lot going on. So maybe you just need to think, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Or can I say my point to you this way? Have you thought about it like this? I think, you know, common courtesy and civility can go a long way.
So I want to give you an opportunity. We've had a really nice discussion about a lot of different issues in town, but I got one that was kind of important to me way back when, and that was our form of government. You know, I wondered when I served a long time ago whether or not it was the right thing, to be honest. So right now, for those of you who don't know, we have a town administrator and a 5-person select board. And for the most part, the select board oversees the operations of, all the department heads. And there's another form of government which you're allowed to have, and that does not require a charter. And that is a town manager, where the town manager oversees all the department heads, and then the select board essentially oversees the town manager and focuses more on policies. Where do you think we are in Goffstown right now? Do you think that we need a change, or do you think we just need the right people on the select board? I mean, I'm just curious as to your take as to where we're at.
So I looked into this issue when it was first presented, and then I have over the past year as well, because I've spent time watching the meetings online and reading the meeting minutes in preparation to sort of understand what a select board does, because I wanted to know what I was getting into. So I think that having the town administrator and then the select board means that you have a tremendous amount of local control. The select board decides a lot. They also have so many decisions that have to be made that I agree with you could be made by a town manager. It's not something that I would come in championing, because I feel like I need to know, sitting in that seat, how this feels and how we work with the town administrator before I think, gosh, we really need to change this. And I think that being in that seat matters. Like that's the difference between sitting on this side of it saying, hey, select board, you guys do a lot. And I know that you and I probably think that it was just the other day that we looked at having a town manager, but the voters turned that down like
7 years or more ago.
a while ago.
It feels like it was yesterday.
Like it does. It feels like it was just yesterday. But we're not a small town. I think I mentioned before, we're the 14th smallest or largest town in the state. We have over 18,000 residents. Should we be looking at a town manager position? It's definitely something we should be considering. And it's one of the reasons why I've pointed out a fresh perspective. Let's not do the same things we always do just because we've always done it the same way. And I think some of that comes because you do a lot. The select board does a lot. And maybe you just don't have time to focus on something different. Could a town manager role allow the select board to spend their time in a different manner? I think that's something to think about. I think I looked at the list of towns in New Hampshire that have town managers. There are many towns that are smaller than we are that have a town manager. They also maybe have a 3-member select board. So they like using that sort of cooperation. Right. So I think it's definitely something to keep in mind. But I feel like I need to experience what the select board feels like from that side of the table.
I think that sounds fair. So you've covered a lot of ground, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of look the voters in the eye and kind of give your 30-second elevator speech on why they should vote for you on March 14th. So
sure,
you have at it.
Well, thank you. And thank you for watching this video. I hope that you've learned something about our town and about me. I do have a Facebook page, Kimberly Peace for Goffstown Select Board, if you're interested in finding out more about who I am. You can also email me at krpeace@hotmail.com. I do live here in town. I'm around. I walk my dog up Durango and Moset almost every morning. So I'm available to answer any questions or have conversations. I love to talk to people. I'm in and out of Apothica a lot. And I'm excited to just talk about how our town can make improvements and how we can move forward as a better town. And I look forward to being a part of your select board. And I definitely hope you all will go out and vote on March 14th.
So, Kimberly, thank you very much for spending time with me. And again, for those of you who might not know, we do have 2 polling locations. One is at Bartlett Elementary. The other one is here at Goffstown High School. And polls will open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 14th. So I want to encourage everyone to get out and vote in your local election. The other thing I wanted to let you know that if you were looking for bios on any of the candidates for select board or any of the other offices that people are vying for this March 14th, go onto the library's website and also the town's website. They have all those bios. So with that, thank you very much, Kimberly, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.